Aloha, I'm Timory, the owner and house photographer of Aloha Ever After, and today I'd like to cover all about Kauai. Why choose Kauai, where to stay on Kauai, where the best places are to get married. So in the last video I pointed out what some of the biggest mistakes that brides can make, and what I suggested was step number one was to make a commitment to which island. So here are all these beautiful islands, and a lot of people don't really know the difference between them. Let me just give a brief overview. Oahu's where the capital is. That has Waikiki and Honolulu, and it's basically a big city brought over and put on an island with all the things that you probably have near a big city that you've lived in or live in now. Freeways, cement, the tall buildings tend to cut off the air circulation, so it's when people think of hot, sticky Hawaii, normally that's thinking of someplace like Waikiki. Then basically we have Maui, which is the next most populated island. Parts of Maui really remind me of Southern California. Again, you have kind of grid traffic, but at least it has a less populated side that does have more waterfalls and places to get away. It's beautiful, and the Big Island is the least populated of the major islands that people go to, and it has a lot of diversity, of natural diversity. If you drive around, it takes a lot longer than people would think, and there are a lot of different types of things, it goes from like desert to high mountains. There can even be snow there. Now I think by far the most beautiful of the islands, and I've lived on a few of them, is Kauai. And the reason why I finally landed here, I grew up in Southern California, is because it's just more beautiful. It's more soft than the other islands. It's safer in a sense. When I lived on the Big Island, they had something called lava rock, which is sharp, and it literally cuts like glass if you fall on it or trip on it. If you have kids, I really suggest Kauai over the other islands for the obvious reasons that if you're near a city like Oahu, you're going to have to be grabbing their hands and keeping them out of traffic. Maui and the Big Island are reasonable ones, but the Big Island, again, with the sharper lava and things being so spread out, kids get really bored of sitting in the car for that long, and it's a little bit like driving cross country to drive around the island. Maui would probably be the next best island to Kauai for kids, but there's just really nowhere like Kauai. It has this diversity and this beauty that's just inexplicable. I mean, we have this canyon that looks like it'd be on par with the Grand Canyon, like somehow it was molded out of a rainbow. And yet it's on this tiny little island. And then it's next to the Nepali coast, which are these sheer, absolutely lush, gorgeous cliffs that dive into this deep blue abyss. And it's right next to this canyon. And sometimes I look at the two and I wonder how it could have possibly been formed like that. Right down below it, there's these dry sand dunes of Polihali. You'd think you were out in the desert somewhere, except for that there's this turquoise, beautiful water next to it. Then we have towns and all sorts of tourist amenities on the other parts of the islands, golf courses, mini golf places, whatever families normally like to do. So basically, you kind of need to decide if you want to get married in a place that's more like a city, then Oahu's your best bet. If you want places that you don't mind dealing with cars and traffic and have a lot more options of things like that are maybe hotels or attractions in terms of like miniature golf or aquariums, then I'd say Maui might be an interesting place. The Big Island, if you want to spend a long time in the car driving around and seeing different climatic zones, is nice. But ultimately, Kauai has them all condensed, and it has all the things that I just mentioned, but in a smaller area. So I really can't say enough about Kauai. Out of the 45 countries I've traveled to, it's definitely the most beautiful place in the world. So anyways, assuming that you have decided on Kauai, now you're probably wondering where to stay. I'll just go through it briefly. We have the North Shore and the South Shore, the East Side and the West Side. That's how locals refer to it. The North Shore has places like the St. Regis and the Honolulu Colony Resort. St. Regis is very pricey, but it's beautiful. The Honolulu Colony Resort, is a nice, quaint little place to stay. And there are tons of other options up there if you just do a Google search for North Shore amenities and things that would go along with places to stay. I would recommend that if there's not some place that's really calling you on the North Shore, the East Side is a nice medium between. The North Shore tends to be very rainy. The South Shore tends to be very sunny. Now, of course, the North Shore isn't that rainy in the dry season. This is during the wet season, which is our general winter time from about October to February. The East Shore has a nice medium of that. It's not too hot and it's not too dry, and it's a great place to plan a wedding because it's green and lush, but it's not too far away or too hot and dry like the South Shore. Then moving around the island, we have the South Shore. I would say if it's possible to stay away from it, unless you're staying at the Grand Hyatt, which is just the best place to stay on the island if you can afford it. Other than that, that's pretty much where all the tourists are sent because it's hot and sunny. However, it is a great place to have a plan B for your beach permit. So my suggestion would be to stay at the Kauai Beach Resort, which used to be a Hilton property. It's a gorgeous location. It's located near a beach that you can use with a beach permit only, which is generally $50, and then you could also get married on property, which costs more, but you're allowed to use the grass area and they provide an arch and such. Now, if you're wondering a little bit more about this or which place would suit you best, I'd say the best thing is to just give me a call, because if I know a little more about someone, I can suggest, if I know you like hiking, well then I can suggest one part of the island over another, whereas if I know you want to be closer to more restaurants and stuff like that, I'd suggest another. Same thing with places to stay. If I know a little bit more about you, I'd be happy to help out and see if I can direct you. I've stayed all over the island. If I could direct you to a place that would suit you best. So once you've picked Kauai and you've picked a place to stay and you're starting to think about where to get married, there are all sorts of different deals around the island to make things less expensive. I try to help point out to people who are visiting good Kauai deals. And I'd say that the best beaches to get married on, if you want to be on the North Shore, are Hanalei Bay, which has a variety even within Hanalei Bay, or on the east side, Lidgate Beach, which is my favorite, or near Kauai Beach Resort. On the south side, I would say avoid shipwrecks because there's just so many people there and everybody tends to go to shipwrecks. However, there's a lot more information on this on my website. You can check out the locations page, and you're also welcome to give me a call because, again, if I know a little bit more about you, I'm able to guide people towards the best place for them. I would recommend to try to get married near where you're staying unless you don't mind driving around, because it's just easier on the day of your wedding to not have to get in the car and drive too far. So I hope that's helpful to you. Please give me a ring and let me know if I can help more. Other than that, enjoy Kauai. You could not pick a more gorgeous and exotic tropical paradise to get married in. Aloha.